Okay, gang, finished my recovery run for today. My recommendation, I'll post it again on the text below here, but I would also just kind of go back to last Friday's recovery run. The warm-up series we went through with the sticks and just the dynamic warm-up, a little bit of jump rope, all of those things still apply. I did that on the front end, and then I went out for about a 15-minute, I think it was a little bit less than that, a little bit less than 2 miles, just to kind of get my legs moving a little bit. So I finished that. I finished my recovery, kind of warm up, and my recovery run for the day. And now I'm gonna cool down since we didn't get a chance to spend much time on that yesterday. So I've got some toys here that we're gonna play with. So I'm just gonna kind of make myself comfortable. And a couple of things I want to talk about when it comes to recovery that I didn't mention yesterday. Recovery doesn't necessarily just apply to those 2 days a week following the real hard workouts. You can do certain recovery strategies every day, right? Everything from foam rolling to kind of different flexibility things, ice bath, whatever it is. You can do all of that on different days. So I wanted to kind of play with a little bit of toys today and just kind of offer some different substitutions, right? So we'll go from most ideal down to least ideal and what you might just have around the house. Most of us by now have probably foam rolled or played with a foam roller, maybe even have a foam roller at the house. If you do, hopefully you use it a lot. I think it's great to just kind of get the tissue ready to work, and then post-workout, just kind of treat that tissue, move some of that blood and everything kind of through the system. Some of you guys may have even seen some of the kind of percussion therapy from Hypervolt or from Hyperice or some of the other kind of brands out there. But the Hypervolt is obviously just kind of a handheld percussion therapy device. You've got a Viper, which is kind of a vibrating foam roller. And in the most simplest terms, the advantage of percussion therapy, obviously it's going to help with a little bit of flexibility with the tissue, but more importantly, it's just going to move blood. That's kind of the simplest way I can say it, is it's just going to help move blood. And if you think of it that way, think of cryotherapy, think of ice baths, think of massage. Ultimately, what you're doing with that stuff is moving blood, and new oxygenated blood is what's got the kind of healing power to it. So anything that's going to help you move blood, you guys have seen some of those Normatec kind of compression sleeves for your legs or arms or whatever. Same thing. We're just trying to move blood as well as possible. So I could do that with my Hypervolt, and I could work my calves. I could do that with my Viper, and I could roll on it just like I would a regular foam roll. Or if I don't have any of that at the house, my wife's probably gonna be upset with me here. I'll wash it first, I promise. But you can even take just like a regular rolling pin. It doesn't have the percussion component to it, but you can still really kind of work that tissue and make sure that we're just kind of treating ourselves pre and post workout and just trying to recover as much as possible. The last thing I would want to say here before I kind of get into some of the movements is sometimes you'll see kind of a list of areas or list of stretches that you might do, and sometimes you're like, man, I just don't have time to do all that. What are the really important ones that I want to do? And I get this question a lot, so I wanted to kind of spend some time on that today, and that is, if there was 3 areas that I would say, hey, if you don't have time for anything else, what 3 areas do you want to treat more regularly than anything else, or with more urgency than anything else? And I would say calves, lats, and hip flexors. Okay, so we're going to show some of those things today, but if you just think of kind of being in that seated position, which is, before this kind of unique time here, and most of us were still kind of going to work and everything. If you think about it, we're all in this kind of seated position all day. Even when we're not at work, we're sitting in our car in traffic on the way to work, and we're sitting in our car on the way home, or we get home and we sit on the couch, and we're just in this seated position all the time, which just creates a lot of kind of junk, right? It creates a lot of overactivity in certain muscles, causes some other ones to be a little less effective. So calves, lats, and hip flexors 100% I would say, hey, if you don't have time for everything, hit calves, lats, and hip flexors, and I think you'll be pretty good, right? So we'll take a second here in a minute. I'll go through a little series of some calf stuff, some lat stuff, and some hip flexor stuff, and we'll see how you guys feel. Cool? Thanks. Okay, so we're gonna start with some upper body. Again, like I said, sometimes when we're at a computer all day, we're at a desk all day, we have a tendency to kind of get our shoulders pulled forward, a little forward neck. Our lats have a tendency to want to kind of pull in some internal rotation because we're at our computer a lot. That just creates what's called an upper cross syndrome. So we just want to kind of do as much as possible to kind of loosen some of that overactive musculature up, pull those shoulders back a little bit so we can reset some neutral posture at least as much as possible. And then we've got to do that as regularly as possible, right? So again, pecs and lats are going to be super tight here if I sit a lot. So what I want to do, if best case scenario, if you have a stability ball, let's use that stability ball. If not, let's use a chair. Anything you've got that's going to be about shoulder height here. So if I'm in just this 4-point stance here, I want to make sure my posture is pretty neutral, and I just want to get my elbow up onto the top of this chair. Ideally, I don't want the chair being too tall, or I don't want the chair being too low. I want to be as close as possible to about that shoulder height. Really, all I'm trying to do here is pull away and look away from where that elevated elbow is. And I should be able to get a little bit of pec, a little bit of shoulders, maybe even some neck flexibility in with this. I'm gonna hold that for about 20 or 30 seconds, and then I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna do that same thing on the right side, right? So I wanna kind of get those pecs loosened up a little bit. The next thing I wanna do is address those lats. So I'm gonna use that same chair. I'm just gonna sit it in front of me here. I'm gonna be in that same 3-point position, but now I wanna stick my hand straight out, thumb up. If you notice, I'm not overextended here, so I'm not out ahead of my hips, and I'm not sitting back here. Ideally, I want knees right below my hips. I want this hand right below my shoulder, and I'm just gonna go thumb up here. Good, nice posture. And I just wanna try and reach my hand as far ahead of me as I can. Again, without extending. I just wanna reach as far as possible. I'm gonna hold that for about 10 or 15 seconds. From there, I just wanna kind of slide my arm across my face just a little bit. And then I wanna kind of go into this cat stretch. So I wanna kind of see if I can touch the ceiling with my back. So those are your 3 progressions. Here, we're just reaching, we cross our face, and we cat stretch from there, right? So that's gonna really help us loosen up our pecs and our lats. Last thing I want to do here is I want to do an exercise called a cobra. This cobra is going to pull those shoulders back a little bit. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down here. I'm going to have my body in a Y formation. My feet are together. I want to squeeze my glutes as tight as possible. I want to go thumbs up. When I bring my chest off the ground, my hands are going to come off the ground a little bit. I'm going to come all the way around as far as I can, thumbs still facing the ceiling, and I'm gonna hold that for 10 seconds. As tight as possible, 10 seconds, and then I'm gonna come right back up into my Y. My hands have not touched the ground. They're gonna stay up, and I'm gonna go into rep number 2, and I wanna do 10 reps of 10-second holds, okay? So when I get back here again, I wanna get my thumbs as high as possible. I wanna squeeze those shoulder blades together in the back, and then I want to come back up to my Y, right back, hold 10 seconds, 10 reps of 10-second holds. Cool? Okay, so next we're going to kind of work on loosening up our hip flexors a little bit. You might say, okay, what's the big deal? What's the danger in our hip flexors being tight or overactive? Or what if we don't want to address that? A lot of times, you know, there's this link between sedentary occupation and low back pain, right? I'm not gonna, that's for another day, but I talked about being seated a lot, right? So if I'm in this seated position a lot, my hip flexors are gonna stay short all day long, right? Because I'm seated. And then when I go try to stand up, they're just not gonna go back where I need them to as easily as I need them to, right? The danger there is that my hip flexors are overactive, then my glutes or my butt, earmuffs, Major, my rear end is underactive, right? And if that can't do its job, then a lot of times my low back has a tendency to want to pull in and do a little more than it should have to. So again, it's important that we kind of create the right type of mobility in our hip flexors here. So real quick, I'm going to use my assistant here. Major, thanks for the help today.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'm going to bring you right over here, and I'm going to have you turn sideways. So move your arm just a little bit. So I want you guys to imagine that you've got an X right here on his hips, right? There's something called lower cross syndrome, and this X, if you see, will really kind of tell us what's overactive and what's underactive, right? So if I imagine this X at his hips, you've got low back and hip flexors really overactive. You've got abs and glutes underactive, right? So we've got to address that tight musculature. We've got to address what's tight with some flexibility, and then we've got to address what's weak with some kind of strengthening exercises, right? So what we're going to do first, thanks Major, you can go ahead and hang out over here. Just stand there and look cool if you would. I'll tell you when I need something else. All right, so the first thing I want to do to start to address some tight hip flexors is I want to do what's called a kneeling hip flexor stretch. Major, if you would want to do this with me, you can. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get in kind of this one knee position, right? My right knee is right underneath my hips, right? So if I turn sideways here so you get a side view, I want to make sure this knee is right underneath my hips. Sometimes people have a tendency to want to start doing all of this. That is not good, right? I want to get knee right below my hips, and I want to get this foot right below that knee. So he's got really good right there, right? The last thing I want to do is I want to elevate this back leg a little bit. So I could do it like this if I've got a smaller client and just start to elevate that. If I've got something a little bit taller, I could maybe even set this up like this to really get there. Or in following Allie's lead, if you guys saw Allie's long run, she had some toddler planks in there. Major, what I'd like you to do, if you could come right here and just get in like a little turtle position for me. Yeah, a little turtle. Yep, just like that. If you don't have anything else, you can just raise that back leg on a kid, right? The kid can just turtle up. And all I'm gonna do here, I've got my back foot elevated. Whatever knee is down, I wanna fire that glute as tight as I can. I wanna squeeze as tight as I can. It's gonna put a little bit of pressure on him, but it's okay. Tight. And what we're gonna get is you should feel that from your quad all the way up to your hip flexor. You're gonna hold that for 20 or 30 seconds, turtle again, and then you're gonna switch sides. So I'm gonna elevate that back leg. I'm gonna be here, foot right below my knee right below my hip, 90, and I'm good. If I don't feel this stretch that much, I can take this side, whatever knee is down, I can take that side and raise it up real high, start to get a little bit of a lean, but not much. Most people firing that glute with that knee down and that back foot elevated, that's gonna be plenty of flexibility kind of pressed on that quad and hip flexion. Cool? So after I do that, I'm then gonna wanna go into, thank you sir, I'm then gonna wanna go into my floor bridge position. So Major, I'm gonna have you lay on your back right here, feet down towards the wall, almost like you were about to do some crunches. Bend your knees. Good. So I'm gonna have him, just lay nice and easy. There you go. I'll make sure my shadow covers the sun for him here. All right, so I wanna make sure I've got everything in line here with my client. I want feet, knees, hips, everything in line. Sometimes people will get out here and they'll be real wide with their feet, not good. All the way together with your feet, not good. Together with your feet, knees wide, not good, right? I want everything for this in line. So hips, knees, ankles, everything in line, right? I want to pull his feet back just about here. I'm also, as I'm doing this, I'm noticing the need probably for some lotion, maybe on some knees here, maybe just a little bit of lotion. We'll do that a little bit later. Go ahead. So now I want to go palms facing the ceiling. So just arms down to your side. I'll make sure my shadow is still in you. Palms down to your side, palms up, hands to your side, good. Now all I want to do here, I want to keep his knees here, and Major, I'm just going to have you bring your hips up as high as you can. Squeeze your butt, come all the way up. Yes, hold that for 10 seconds. Down just a little, down, 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 right there. Tight, 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 squeeze your butt, tight, tight, tight. We're going to do 10-second holds and then relax. Relax, butt down, good. So I want to do 10 reps of 10-second holds, just like we did with our Cobras. Cool? Okay, so last of all, we've got calves. This is one that we're probably all most familiar with. I want to go through real quick just a good, better, best scenario in terms of equipment at home. Good, just a regular rolling pin. Nothing fancy here, but you want to make sure we can get all the way down almost to where our Achilles is, and then just kind of the meat of our calf and everything as well. If you're here, you can certainly do your hamstrings as well, but I'm really wanting to attack those calves right now. So I want to go inside and outside and all of that. Better would be my Viper. I can certainly kind of get some, I'm going to use this here in a minute to demo. And if you've got a Hypervolt, I think this is best case scenario here, because you can move to find areas that it might be more difficult to get with a regular foam roll or whatever. So what I want to get on here is just some regular calf flexibility. I'm going to want to get, personally, I kind of go on this second level here. And all I want to do, nice and easy, is just kind of pick my body up off the ground. And I'm just nice and easy, kind of up and down. I'm going to treat this in two different sections. I'm going to kind of go from kind of where my Achilles, that lower leg area. You notice I'm not going too fast here. Sometimes people want to kind of rush through this. I'm also trying to externally rotate my foot a little bit so I can get kind of the outside of my calf. I can get a couple of trips there, and then I can internally rotate and kind of do the same thing, right? I can get some of that inside of my lower leg. From there, again, same thing. I can get to a little bit of my upper calf, that what we refer to as the gastroc. We go here. Again, same thing. I want to get a couple of trips, and then I can start to get some kind of leg movement, internal and external, just to kind of hit that a little bit more. If you don't have any of these tools at your disposal, somebody says, hey, can I just do some regular static flexibility? Yes, you can. I'll walk you through just a couple of calf stretches here, and then we'll be done. So I could use a wall, I could use a tree, whatever I want to do. I'm going to start out trying to kind of keep my posture as upright as possible. I'm going to use this tree to kind of brace myself here. And I want to try to keep this foot back as far as possible and just really kind of start to get a good stretch there. I'm really kind of trying to keep that leg as straight as possible. From there, I can move my leg back, and then I can start to just drop that knee and start to get a little bit more of that lower calf as well. So static flexibility is fine too. I'm not here to tell you what your training philosophy should be, but there's a lot of research that says static flexibility pre-workout isn't ideal. So I'd maybe stay with some active or dynamic flexibility before your run or before your workout, and then maybe some static flexibility post-workout. Cool? Good luck, guys. Thanks for spending the time with me. We'll talk to you soon.